This podcast represents the individual opinions of Dr. Dmitry Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, and the guests. It should not be taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.
Steph, how you sleeping?
What's that? Oh my God, I haven't been sleeping much. For so many reasons, man. I'm running on fumes. After we record this video, hopefully I'm gonna spend the entire day sleeping. I have to catch up, man. I have to catch up. I'm not gonna be able to stand up if I can like this.
Yeah, sleep is at a premium right now.
Those games.
For those that are listening to us nationally, apologies, but this is probably going to be another South Florida centric show. Well, not completely, but we are based in South Florida, and right now, South Florida is having its greatest playoff run in the history of South Florida. The Panthers, the Heat, they're absolutely nuts, and the entire city.
This is wild.
The entire tri-state county, Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade is just snorting. It's snorting playoff sports.
It's crazy.
More than they've been snorting anything since like the cocaine cowboy days of the 80s. And there's absolutely no sleep. Yeah, and that is saying a lot. Scarface would be very proud of what we're doing right now in bathrooms. And there's absolutely no sleep.
I'm walking into work literally this week. Everybody's like sluggish, dragging their feet. It's like, it's what's going on? I'm like, we all watched the game, right?
Absolutely not. Did you stay up for the 4 overtime game?
Unfortunately, I did.
I did not. And I was not going to stay up last night for the overtime. Except
they build you out.
Matthew Tkachuk praised him in everything. As I was about to shut off the TV, the man scored a goal and saved my life. But then, of course, I have to stay over for the post game, so I didn't really get.
Yeah.
I didn't really get very much sleep, and then we have to wake up.
Yeah. While we're doing that quick sports show segment that we like not to do because of our mental health thing, I'll just add something. I have to add because as a Heat fan, I have to ride on what's his name, Grant Williams. I want to just say, first of all, thank you to Grant Williams for firing up Jimmy Butler, as if he need more firing.
Seriously, right?
This guy, out of all guys in the NBA, you want to fire up that guy that go on the stage and talk and walk his talk. You want to do that during the game, man?
Seriously, it's like they're calling it poking the bear, but it's like poking like 3 bears. It's
wow. You could see when the game changed. Like it was so tangible. Jimmy actually smiled. Right. His mindset, and that's when every Heat fan was like, "Well, we won this game, right? We were losing by then. We were like,
he better
stop, down
too.
5-6 points. Jesus.
He better stop because he's going to go the Dylan Brooks route, and he's going to end up being cut.
Right. Actually, he's a good player. He's a good player. And Jimmy gave him props too. Classic Jimmy. Even props, but tongue in cheek, he said, that guy was not the answer.
Yeah, he was walking off the court. He's like, "That's not the answer.
That's not the answer." Supposedly in game, he walked by the Celtic bench and he told Joseph Mazzulla, "This is not the guy you want to guard me." He told him.
He told him that.
He told him, "This is not the guy you want guarding me, man."
That's right. Well, look, we're going to get back to all the silly stuff that we're going to do at the beginning, and then we're going to go into mental fatigue. But we're going to take a little detour here into Lake Seriousville because Steph wants to talk about Ja Morant again.
Okay.
So go ahead. I'm going to go back on mute.
It's not going to be a rant, guys.
Go for it.
It's not going to be a rant. I'm done with the ranting. It's not going to be a rant. It's not going to be an apology either. But I just want to acknowledge some, shout out to a good friend of mine. She brought up to my attention that she had been talking to her friends and somebody told her that, well, it's not fair because it seems like in America, well, that person is white, by the way. White America, they get to brandish their firearms. They get to be very proud about showcasing the firearm. And even some lawmakers and public servants like are mailing their Christmas cards with them doing guns, and and it's a fair point. Why are we? The question is, why are we being acting different towards Ja Morant because a black dude? And the further argument is that some people told me that actually there's a picture online circulating that shows a former NBA player, Chris Kayman. He was a center. He played for, as I remember, he played for Clippers at one point. And there's like 3 photos that people have been showing around from him in 2013, 2016. As he was a member of the NBA, he's got photos of him holding long guns, like arsenal. Like you can tell that guy he loves his rifle. And he was playing in the NBA as he's posting this image on his social media. And the point that Stephen Jackson and Stephen Smith have been making online and on the media is that guy was never suspended even 1 second, and nobody ever had an uproar about it, because the argument is that it's because he's white and Ja Morant is black. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm not saying that's fair. We're talking about two different parallel issues. There's a unfairness treating Ja Morant differently than they treated, that guy particularly. But at the same time, what Ja Morant did is not questionable. Ja Morant signed a contract with a private entity, a private company. In the contract, they tell you that you have to uphold the brand of the NBA to the whole, almost respect or standard, and you cannot hurt the brand. So you cannot say, "Oh, what he did was not wrong because so and so else did it." That's children, kindergarten behaviors or arguments. This is not bad because he did it also. you know. So I'm like, guys, I agree. It's not fair that Chris Kayman had zero problem when he did it, and now Ja Morant, everybody's on his back. It's not fair. I agree. At the same time, Ja Morant should not be putting himself in a situation. After the first incident, he admitted he made a mistake. He went on TV himself. He said he made a mistake. He said he was going to go to therapy. He said he's going to correct his act. That's his own words. Then he followed up by doing the same thing again. So once he goes on media on a live or edited interview and said he made a mistake, well, I take him at his words. He made a mistake and he did it again, right? So do not mix that we being sensitive or we being blindsided because he's black or the other guy was white. I don't care what happened with Chris Kayman. He should have been also treated the way Ja Morant is being treated. He should have. That's in the past. But Ja Morant is being treated for what he's doing right now, and he has to deal with it. So the two things can be equally valid. You don't have to be. In America, it's always like it's this or never. It's this or that. There's no both things can be true at the same time. Both arguments are true at the same time. That's it.
Is your point also that he was trying to use mental health as sort of a shield for himself?
I'm not gonna go back into mental health with Ja Morant. I'd admit that the first time we got caught up with it because we're a mental health podcast. We kind of like, we drink the soda or Kool-Aid. Pun intended, because talking about racial issue, right? We drink the Kool-Aid. So because we're a mental health show, and we give him benefit of the doubt because he said he went to a therapy program in Florida that lasted maybe a week, and that supposedly was ongoing, and then now it happened again because that time he said he was just dealing with stuff, right? Anxiety stuff. And remember, everything we said prior to the gun issue was allegation that he had been in people's face, he had been fighting with teenagers, he had been showing guns to people and threatening people. There was a laser beam, incident. So there was a pattern that he described was a pattern of him not being able to cope with anxiety. I don't have any patient in my office that are acknowledging the behavior being the anxiety being a reason for their, I want to say criminal because they didn't do anything criminal, but for their disturbances, behavioral disturbances, I would say, for the mishappenings in law, with the law and the being fight, for example. Anxiety can cause several different issues. Very rarely in my office, somebody shows up, Doc, I'm being fired, I'm fighting every time, I'm doing this because I'm anxious. Usually I can give you issue with your relationship, can be issue with your, with the way you cope with life and sleep and the way you perform at work and everything. But I don't think anxiety should be an excuse for you to act in a behavior that the behavior that Ja Morant has been acting. Now, if you have a different disorder, if we're talking about, if he was a teenager, we could talk about, ODD, which is diagnosis that we give children that have unbecoming behaviors, they get in trouble. And if it goes to 18, then it becomes antisocial behavior. We're not talking about that. He said anxiety, right? So this time around, I'm not gonna mention that his mental health is at stake. I think at this point, we fair to say I don't think it's a mental health issue. I think it's just his behavior issue.
You said you weren't going to rant.
That wasn't a rant. I think I kept my calm. I think so.
If you were driving down the street and you saw Nikola Jokić standing on the street, would you think that he was an NBA player?
That guy's a boogeyman. I would think it would be, I don't know, a wrestler or somebody, because that guy is huge. He's like, he's not inviting. His persona, his shape, he's not inviting.
Is he the best NBA player in the history of the NBA that doesn't look like an NBA player at all?
He doesn't look like he can run. He looks like he can just walk and slide to us. He doesn't look like he can take me on a, I don't know, 10-meter dash.
and yet he's the best player in the NBA right now.
He plays a lot of minutes. I don't know.
Apologies to Jimmy Butler, who we love, but yeah, I mean, how can you not think that Nikola Jokić is the best player in the NBA right now?
No, I can't think that. Actually, I'm gonna be a fanboy. Jimmy Butler has been the best player in the playoff because Jimmy Butler is doing it.
But have you seen what Nikola Jokić is doing? Because I know it's late. And
he's got people with him. He got Jamal, whatever his name is, Murray with him. Jimmy has Jimmy, and he has a bunch of undrafted players.
He's averaging a triple-double. I realize we're not watching these games out west, and he's beating LeBron. Like, he's not just beating LeBron; he's going to sweep LeBron.
Yeah,
he's going to sweep LeBron right out of the playoffs, and he's doing it averaging a triple-double by shooting threes as a 7-footer who looks like a sofa with bloody arms. It's an absolutely ridiculous thing that he's doing, and I don't know that the Heat have anybody that can stop him, assuming they get past the Celtics.
I don't know. He's passing like Magic Johnson. He's shooting like, I don't know, speaking of
Larry
Curry.
Bird.
You know, I don't know. The guy is good. He's smart. He's smart as hell.
It's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a player like that before.
No, the argument about the best center in the league, put it to rest. Right now, the best center in the league is Nikola Jokić.
But is he even a center? Like, he's a center / point guard.
No, that guy's a center.
Forward. Like, I don't even know what position he plays.
If you what is it like? He's 10 feet tall. If he's that tall, looking like a fridge or a sofa, you have to be a center. By default.
The guys that look like that just park themselves in the lane and block shots. Like,
yeah,
Perkins used to do that. He looked like that on the Celtics back when the Heat had the big three, and the guy literally didn't move out of the lane. And this guy shoots threes. He throws behind the back passes and no look passes, and he averages a triple-double. And I don't know that the Heat have anybody on their team that can cover him. Bam is more athletic than him, but
I know that matchup. You know, we're gonna go to mental health. I promise. But the playoff is so good. We're gonna get into.
You can always fast forward, right?
Yeah, yeah. You can fast forward to the. You know, we have the timing stated in the synopsis. But I was gonna say, Bam might not be able to deal with them. But this matchup is gonna be a matchup for Spo. I think Spo's gonna have to guard everybody else, so he cannot pass to anybody, and have him score 40 points and still lose. That's the way they're gonna have to do it. I think they can contend Ja Morant. That guy is good, by the way. I think they can contend him because if they could contend, what's his name? The New York shorty. I forgot to mix up names so easily. Brunson. They're so forgettable. Yeah. So Brunson.
Nice.
If they can deal with Brunson, I think they could probably deal with Ja Morant. The issue would be let Jokić cook by himself and don't get anybody else started. So I think that's going to be more for a Spoelstra.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. They've only won 2 against Boston. They need 4. So
yeah, it's in the bag.
Relax. Oh my God.
Speaking of playoff and overtime and triple overtime and quadruple overtime.
Okay. So let's get into.
Do you see any mental fatigue? Right. What about this mental fatigue thing? I wouldn't be able to play one more minute after a full, 3/4 of hockey.
Right. So the reason we're doing this is because of the 4 overtime game. And we didn't even expect. We chose mental fatigue after the 4 overtime game on Wednesday, the Panthers and the Hurricanes. And then the Panthers and the Hurricanes decided, you know what? That wasn't enough. Let's do another overtime last night. Fortunately, that one didn't go into 4 overtimes, but the way they play defense, and the way Bobrovsky, is playing goal, it very well could have. And the Hurricanes goalies also are crazy good right now. And the way goals are being called back in that series, that could have very easily gone into multiple overtimes too. It's just that the Panthers got a power play, and the power play just worked. And it usually doesn't. Their power play doesn't look very good, but it just happened to look very good. And Tkachuk got open in front of the net and popped it in over the glove side. So we decided to do mental fatigue. And what does it do to players as games go along and as they get tired? And it's, as you would expect, I suppose, it does make a difference.
I'm sure. We even had an episode on choking. I think there's got to be an argument that the two might intertwine. I would even add that maybe the yips, the threshold for yips get lower as mental fatigue, kicks in, right?
Well, it goes even beyond sports. This is the interesting thing about mental fatigue. It goes beyond sports because
right.
We're going to be a little bit self-indulgent here, not just because we're a South Florida show, but because we're doctors too. We're medical doctors. So I don't know if you've found our podcast because you think that this is a sports psychology podcast, but we're a little bit unique. This is a sports psychiatry podcast. So we are actually medical doctors. We get a lot of, we don't know the difference between psychologists and psychiatrists. We're not going to really go into that too much, other than to say that we are medical doctors, MDs. We went to medical school. So after medical school, medical doctors do residencies. We happen to do psychiatry residencies. Other doctors do all kinds of different residencies, surgeries, internal medicine, all kinds of dermatology, that kind of plastic surgery, different things. But going into this mental fatigue thing, in 2003, the work hours were changed for medical residents.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Why was it done? Is because ACGME realized that medical errors were up, and the mental fatigue of physicians after really, really, really long shifts and work hours per week. Some surgical residents, for instance, were doing 120, 130 hours a week. Now, imagine whatever job that is that you do, whether it's podcasting, whether it's working behind a desk, whatever job it is that you do, and you did 120 to 130 hours of that job, and you would do not only that, but you would do 48 to 72 hour shifts. In other words, you wouldn't go home for 72 straight hours.
Right. People, and I'm gonna answer real quick in the parentheses. People are so aware of that now that patient would ask the surgeon to please schedule me in the first slot in the morning. I don't want you at the last slot.
That's right.
I don't want you at the end of the shift. I want you at 7 a.m. when you're just walking and scrubbing. I don't want you at 7 p.m.
That's right. And there's actually a documented effect of this, and this is not necessarily mental fatigue, but it could potentially go into this. There's something called the July effect, where residents change over in July. So the resident year shifts from the end of June is when old residents graduate, new residents come in July. July is actually the month, and the quarter from July, August, September is the month and the quarter where the highest number of medical errors happen in hospitals, especially teaching hospitals. So if you have something you want scheduled or something you want done, July is not the month to go into that teaching hospital. That's something called the July effect. So what did ACGME do? They required a decrease in these work hours. So they decreased work hours and they capped them at 80 hours per week, which is still pretty high. And they required no more than a 24-hour shift with at least one day off in 7 and a 10-hour break between on-call shifts.
Right. You mentioned ACGME. For those who don't know, ACGME is just an acronym that, it's the body, that regulate teaching hospitals or education in medicals, right, in hospitals. So it's basically the accreditation council for graduate medical education. So the other one that are saying this is okay, this is not okay, this should not happen, this should happen.
Right. I think it stands for the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education.
Or graduate medical education.
So why are we bringing this up? but because mental fatigue is not only a sports thing, it's a everyday thing. So it's an everyday thing in work, it's an everyday thing in sports. And what the studies show in sports, for instance, is mental fatigue impacts executive functioning. It seems to decrease offensive skill rather than defensive skill, which is
That's interesting. I read that too. Yeah, I heard that. I don't know.
I would have thought it would be different, but
different, right? Doesn't imply that you need less brain power to defend than to actually be on offense.
I would have thought defensive skill would have been more because you need more attention. What happened as I continued to read it was that offensive skill requires more technical skill, and the technical skill requires more executive functioning. What happened is the technical skill is the speed in which you need to do offensive skill remains, but the accuracy declines as you get more mentally tired.
Right.
Okay. So what do you do about that? Right. So for instance, in hockey, it's enormously fast. These people are skating on razor blades, and these people are super fast. The passes start to get less accurate as you're going that quickly. The passes get less accurate. They're more intercepted. You get more odd man rushes as overtimes go longer and longer and longer. And you saw this in the Panthers game with the Hurricanes. As the overtimes go longer, you're going to get more odd man rushes. But in that particular game, they played very conservatively. They didn't do very high-risk passes. They were very slow, very deliberate. And even the TNT crew noticed that. In the first overtime, they said, because I did watch after the first overtime, and that's when I kind of gave up.
That's when you became mentally fatigued.
I became mentally fatigued, and I was done. But I listened to them, and they said they're very deliberate, they're very slow. We could be here for a while, and they noticed that because what happens is as you become mentally fatigued, you become less accurate.
So it's a good strategy. It's almost like in boxing. You let them go in offense, and you just keep your energy in the bank because somebody's gonna get tired. So that was probably very good tactics.
It's the rope-a-dope, right? You just sit on a rope. You let them hit you, and
let them spend
take
energy.
The punches, so let them expend the energy, and then you crush them. You come out of it. And the longer you expend this fatigue, you identify things on defense, your decision-making becomes impaired. You impair identification. The alertness becomes declined, and you are unable to become attentive to what you're staring at. So you identify players less or more poorly, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So what is executive functioning then? As doctors, as psychiatrists, we know what that is, but a lot of the lay people hear that term when it comes to dementia, for instance, because executive functioning is one of the things that declines in dementia. But what is it exactly? And it's actually pretty complex. So let me read the definition from the APA. This is the APA Dictionary of Psychology, their official definition. This is the American Psychological Association has a dictionary of psychological terms. So this is their definition of it. Higher level cognitive processes of planning, decision-making, problem-solving, action sequencing, task assignment and organization, effortful and persistent goal pursuit, inhibition of competing impulses, flexibility in goal selection, and goal conflict resolution. These often involve the use of language, judgment, abstraction, and concept formation, and logic and reasoning. How about that, huh? All right. So look, that's very technical, right? Very technical.
When the way I knew it is like in dementia, I like to know the patient is able to plan, organize, manage what they're doing, pay attention. Attention is a big one. Talking about sports, pay attention, and a fancy word, you can put everything together and package it in one thing is to process information. So all that is information. The way you process it, is you might not have the mental, I want to say toughness, but fitness to get all that sensory input, what you see, what you hear, what you already have as basic information, and how you process it to actually act on the decision making.
Yep. And I don't want to call this dumbing it down because it's not, but let me just put it in less technical terms. Okay.
Right.
This is from Harvard, Harvard.edu. This is their definition of it. And
are you calling Harvard dumb? You say you're gonna dumb it down.
I didn't say that. I didn't say
you
that.
You said you're gonna dumb it down, and then you go straight to Harvard.
And then I'm going to Harvard. Yes, I'm dumbing it down from Harvard. Yes. Hey, look, it's Boston, right? It's
Right.
Boston.
Okay.
It's
We're picking up on
Boston.
Boston.
It's Harvard
Right.
Yard in Boston. I'm dumbing
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, Boston's gonna love us in South Florida, man. So this is a definition from Harvard.edu. Executive functioning refers to a set of skills. These skills underline the capacity to plan ahead and meet goals, display self-control, follow multiple step directions, even when interrupted, and stay focused despite distractions, among others. And that is a really, really good definition of executive functioning that is not very technical. Multiple step directions, even when interrupted, stay focused despite distractions. And if you think about it in the context of sports, right? Constantly interrupted, multiple step directions. Hockey, basketball, for instance, you've got to find your teammates. You've got to pass. You've got to defend. Where's everyone around you? Right. So in sports, as the game goes along, as you get more fatigued physically, mentally, you also get more fatigued. These kinds of things, these kinds of mistakes start to happen. I don't know if Boston, and we're talking about the Celtics now, in late game situations, they collapsed the last two games against the Heat. Was that mental fatigue or were the Heat just better?
They always mention, speaking of that, they always mention two guys in the playoff, Tatum and James Harden. There's a stat, like they have, I don't know if it's 0 point, but they scored like very minimal points in the fourth quarter, 2 points, 0 points, and it's been going on and on and on every single game. Tatum could be scoring, I don't know, 10 points a quarter. He goes to the fourth quarter and then he just loses it.
Yeah.
He just loses it,
Tatum didn't hit a field goal in game 2 in the fourth quarter. All his points came
right.
At the free throw line.
And then I always ask, is Spoelstra that good at defensive scheme that he's turned to switch in the fourth quarter? It cannot just be that. It cannot just be Spoelstra's formula for the fourth quarter. No, it gotta be something more up to do about, Jason Tatum himself. So I don't know.
I have no idea. I'd
know.
love to hear him say anything about it, but I listened to the post game. I didn't hear him say anything about fatigue or anything like that.
Right.
Before I get into, biochemistry of it, and there's just a brief thing on biochemistry, I want to play a few clips from Paul Maurice, Sergei Bobrovsky on what they said about fatigue real quick. So this is Paul Maurice this is after the four overtime game. This is Paul Maurice on.
Take it away, Paul.
And he's, by the way, if you haven't heard him post game, he's really funny.
He's amazing.
But
he's amazing. So. It's fun.
At some point, you're wondering. This is not a critique; it's a question. At some point, you're wondering how long can these men push this hard for, without it becoming dangerous. I mean, they get into this, locked into this rhythm, and they're at that point they're like thoroughbreds, right? But how long a racetrack can we keep for these guys? I wonder if there's a cutoff that you would need at some. This is not a league complaint; they've never really got to, but we're getting fairly close to that threshold where nothing good happens after that for these men.
How much longer can you push before it becomes dangerous? I don't know if he was talking about, because the question wasn't specific, but I don't know if he was talking physically or mentally, but I mean both.
Well, I suppose it's mostly mentally, right? There's an expectation. I guess there's an unsaid rule in sport that you're supposed to be fit for the entire game. Like that's your job. You have one job. No, and even among the jobs that you have, being fit, that's the Pat Riley mantra, right? The best fit is that, and the fittest, the most, I don't know, whatever the mantra of the Heat is. You need to be able to withstand 48-minute game. You need to be able to have enough in the tank to go to overtime. Because if you're not, the other team will take advantage of your fatigue, and that's how you lose the game. If you look at the Panthers series, the team that had more in the tank won the game after four overtime. So
was it, or did Tkachuk just get a lucky shot?
I wanted to call him lucky.
I mean, that shot was, I don't know.
There's a lot of mental, physical. You're supposed to be there. You're supposed to have enough in the tank. Mental, I think that's when the best separate themselves from the masses, right? Because the Kobe of the world, they have that edge. The Kevin Garnett of the world that played. Kevin Garnett was most of Kevin Garnett's play in his career was mostly mental. He'll play with you. That guy was he would talk to himself on the bench just to freak out other players. So he was playing mind games all the time. So these guys they have an edge if they're mentally fit, meaning they're not getting mentally fatigued again during the game, they have the edge, because everybody's on the same playing field physically. At least they should be. So if you have the edge on the mental side of things, you probably had a better,
Right.
advantage than the other players.
Right. Well, what's your
And-
Bobovsky on whether or not he felt fatigued?
How did you feel coming back from the long game in Game 1? When you went out there, did you feel strong, or did it take some time to work into it?
No, I felt good actually. I had the morning skate. I felt good. Everything felt. We have a good group of athletic trainers. They manage the recovery well, and they got we got good resources. To ask good people to ask how to recover, and they did a great job for us.
So he's talking about the trainers and everything. By the way, those clips are from the Florida Panthers and the NHL. And so he's talking about, the trainers. He was doing okay. The first clip from Paul Maurice is after the 4 overtime. The second clip from Bob is after Game 2. So they were asking him, what was it like coming back after Game 2? And one more, and this is after the 4 overtime game. This is Bob talking about being out there after the 4 overtime game.
I don't even know if Bob was mentally fatigued or not. What makes him
you have to
qualified
be
at
a
that
little
point?
crazy, right, to be a goalie in general.
Oh,
And
God.
that's what they say about him is that he's fine, but he's like a little weird. And if you ever watch these interviews, he's Kachuk and the other guys, they kind of laugh in the interviews. Bob is a straight shooter, man. He doesn't smile or anything, and he just answers the questions. So this is Bob after the 4 overtime game.
Bob, obviously for you, you played every minute out there. Just what's the challenge the longer the game goes on, kind of keeping your focus and kind of maintaining? Because it seemed like every overtime you had to make 3 or 4 huge saves.
Yeah, it's it kind of becomes the game of attrition. You just trying to be patient and wait for the moment and for the shot, one shot at a time. You don't think too much ahead. You just stay with the moment and trying to do the best to keep the puck out of the net.
Yeah, mostly that's a non-answer. But if you heard him, he basically just said it's a game of attrition. You don't think too far ahead, just one at a time. Keep the puck out of the net, which is not a bad strategy when you're tired. You don't really worry about too far ahead. You just kind of deal with what's in front of you, which is a really good strategy. So what is the mechanism of this kind of stuff? From a medical perspective, well, they're theorizing that there's a decrease in dopamine in a place called the anterior cingulate cortex. Here we go being technical again. The anterior cingulate cortex is this little part of the brain right behind the frontal lobe and right in front of the corpus callosum. Now, you can go Google that on image searches.
You guys can fast forward
if you wanna do that. But it's involved in decision making and learning and like cost benefit analysis and error monitoring. So if you imagine if you're getting less signal to that area, you're going to start making mistakes because you're cost benefit analysis and stuff like, is this pass a good pass? Is this shot a good shot? Is going to be more prone to error in sports. And so that makes a lot of sense. The theory behind that's the place to go. So what do you do about all this? Like, what do you do?
And then before you answer that question, I also add that a little bit, not quite the same thing, but they might have some overlapping. Is people that have attention deficit disorders. There's the intercingulate cortex is also implicated in derangement of ADD, right? Because of the firing of the neural networks.
Correct. Yes.
So a deficit, of one of the part of this network may cause a breakdown in modulation of cognitive control, and allocation of your attention, and then also could play well into impulsivity, distractibility, and inattention. So that's why people that have ADD or ADHD, they have difficulty focusing on things, and that could look a lot like mentally fatigue, right? Just
that's right.
Quick correlation to the common people, right?
That's right. So people with mental fatigue and late game and sports can look a lot like people with ADHD. So
Right.
Ritalin for everyone on the bench, right?
Hey, I don't know
There you go.
I don't know which player has, but there's a waiver. You can have a waiver sign. There's sports psychiatrists out there. They do have a waiver sign. If you're already really diagnosed with ADHD and you want to play sports and you want to take a stimulant that is banned by the league, you can possibly have a waiver signed by your doctor saying that you really are playing at a deficit if you don't get medicated. So
Yes, it is. That's true. Yes, it is.
find
Preach.
yourself a good psychiatrist.
That is
Sports
true.
psychiatrist,
So
I might add. Yeah.
So other than putting crushed Ritalin in your Gatorade, what do you do about all of this stuff?
Please do not listen to Dmitry, guys. Do not.
No, should I play the sports speculation?
Yes.
No. Don't put Ritalin in your in your Gatorade.
This is what we guys
put Ritalin in. Do not put Ritalin in your Gatorade. Don't do that.
Capital
so what do
caps
you do about
underlined
all this
and
stuff?
bold.
Well, okay, so your decision making is impaired, your accuracy is impaired because if the speed of the game is not decreasing, your accuracy is impaired. What do you do about all this stuff? Well, as a coach, what you probably want to do is you want to put your players in a position where they have more time to make decisions. So you want to try and get them into open space where they're in a place where they can have more time to make these things. And if you are on the opposite team, you want to reduce that time. So I would say in basketball, for instance, you want to trap. You want to play full court. You want to trap. You want to get the ball into closed spaces. You want to make them make quick decisions to get the ball out of people's hands. So if you look at sort of the Heat, what they do is they start to bring players up towards the end of the game. One of the biggest things that annoys me in basketball is when on the inbounds, they sort of roll the ball and guys start walking up the court with the ball rolling.
I would jump on that ball. I would dive.
God,
I would dive. I'm like,
it's
at an arm reach, arm length reach. Like, why don't you just jump?
It's not just that; it allows them to get the ball at half court. Like, why are you not just go up and stand next to them so they can pick up the ball? Like, it just annoys the hell out of me. So the Heat, towards the end of the game, bring players up so that they can't do that, and it decreases their decision-making time. It increases the clock. It makes the clock move.
Right. Typically what they would do, they would pressure the point guard off ball so he doesn't get the ball. So they'd rather the ball be in the hands of somebody that's not a playmaker. They'd rather have it in the hands of a shooting guard or a small forward or a power forward or center. Because if it's in a point guard's hands, he might be making the right decision. So what they do, they'll deny him the passes. They play defense off ball. So those are things that you could look into sports to see what we can do to derail people's attention and quick decision making.
In the Heat, what they've done is they've tried to take the ball out of Tatum's hands. The thing about the Celtics is they have 3 or 4 other guys that can make plays. They just haven't done it. And hockey is a little bit more difficult because the speed of the game doesn't change. But if you play back and you play a little bit more conservatively, you can try and you don't make these long 2-line passes that you would try and make maybe in the first period to try and spring guys to enter the zone and stuff like that. Look, I don't know hockey as well as I know other games, football, for instance, but in football, I would say that towards the end of the game, you'd maybe want to blitz your quarterback a little bit more if you can't get pressure with 4 guys to try and reduce the time that they have, especially a less experienced quarterback. You may not want to do that to Tom Brady. Famously, Dan Marino would crush blitzes back, in the 90s. Really good quarterbacks don't worry about those kinds of things because they already know where the ball is going before the snap. But inexperienced quarterbacks may have a problem with stuff like that. And
that's why you see they start running the ball.
That's right. And they start running the ball. Good teams will run in the fourth quarter because that's an easy way to get through fatigue unless your running back is super fatigued. But that's why you have really good running games to kind of get through that. Anyway, that is our mental fatigue. And hopefully this didn't mentally fatigue you and then you guys turned it off.
And I was going to say that you guys, this is a lot of Jimbo talking, but you all experience mental fatigue when you're at work. When it's 4:30-ish, 40-ish, 45-ish, nobody can read an email anymore, right? you can even type a sentence and you can do it. It's time to go home. Your body knows it.
That's right. Yeah. And if you're especially staying up for all of these games. And by the way,
Right.
NBA, why are you starting at 8:30? Like, come
So
on.
actually,
I get the
it's
West
better than the
Coast and
last
stuff,
round.
but
Right.
seriously.
The last one they were starting at like 10:30. It was 8:30. I think it's fair for the West Coast. I mean, it's for us being in the East Coast.
And you know what they're going to do in the finals is they start the games at 9:30 or 9 because of the West Coast. And I'm like,
Right.
look,
Right.
if I'm living in LA or in the West Coast, Portland or Seattle, and the game starts at 4, oh yes, give me a 4 o'clock game because then I can start
Happy hour.
watching it at work, and I can slack off at work, and I won't have to be mentally fatigued. Like seriously, right now, do you want a game to start at 6 while you're eating dinner? Do people eat dinner at 6, or is that just me? Because
I don't know.
I don't know.
No, nobody knows.
It's ridiculous.
No.
Like you
If
can't
you,
stay.
if you have
can't,
kids,
9
if you have
o'clock.
kids, probably. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we'll be doing it. Sports is. I would love to see a study if performance at work declines during the playoff during the NBA or the NHL or the Super Bowl. What happens on Monday after the Super Bowl? I'd love to study about work in America if there's a performance decline when there is late game or sports event finals because people are staying late. They're drinking and they're hyping, they're yelling, and they show to work the following day. I bet you they're not showing up 100%.
Oh, I bet there was a decline in performance in South Florida on Thursday morning.
Oh yeah. Last week,
there was no doubt.
Yeah, there was no doubt. Last week, no.
Absolutely. This entire month, there's no productivity in Broward and Dade County.
But I would say the morale is very high. I go out and everybody's happy. Everybody's wearing a jersey or a Panthers gear. And I don't know if it's on social media. The teams have been playing each other's tees, right? You'd see the Panthers walking out the tarmac. They're wearing Heat gear, and you see Jimmy wearing a Tatchak jersey. So it's fun. The morale is really good right now in South Florida. At least Mullins, would you please join us? Like, come on. Do something, Mullins.
The Marlins are over 500, aren't they?
I hope they stay like that, But be part of the family, be part of the culture.
The Marlins are over 500. They haven't been over 500 in years. Come on,
Shocker.
man. It's the Marlins.
Well, keep it going. Well, that makes my point. The morale is so high that even the Marlins are playing better, right? So I'll give credit. I give credit to the Heat and the Panthers.
What we need is the Dolphins to pick it up. That's what we need.
I think they're doing good. I think with McDaniel and Tua, I think the culture is changing. I think they're gonna have a better season this year. So I think
the Marlins are 24-22. They're 4.5 back of Atlanta in second place in the NL East. Come on, let's go. South Florida, stand up. All right, let's go.
Day full of hiccups? Need a shake-up? Listen up. It's Dr. Bick and Dr. DeGraff's mental health tip of the day.
Mental health tip of the day time, of course.
Do we have the Heat sponsoring us?
Yeah, it's sponsored by nobody. The Heat's not gonna. No. We should get it sponsored by the Heat and the Panthers, just like for the playoffs. But I think they're a little busy right now. Don't you think?
Yeah, maybe we get busy winning. Maybe we can reach out to what's this guy's business? Big Face, Jimmy's coffee business. I don't know. Just an idea.
Jimmy has a coffee business?
Where have you been? He has a brand. It's called Big Face. He started doing coffee. Now he's doing like his gear, whatever he's wearing. He has a brand now. It's Big Face. He started in the bubble.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to follow him on Twitter. We're gonna have to follow his Big Face Coffee on Twitter. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to dial it up to free advice that you're not in my office. Pretend that you're not seeing me as a psychiatrist right now, because I do tell people that in my office, because we do have people come to our office with what we call recurring intrusive thoughts, right? Those are things that they think about that bring about stress and distress, but they don't want to do it. Put X, Y, and Z in that box. Those are things that come to your head and you don't feel like it's yours, and we call that dystonic thoughts. And if it's recurring, it's intrusive, it's recurring thoughts. So Some people have it because they feel like they will hurt someone, or they will do something to somebody, or they will touch somebody's behind when they're walking in the street or whatever. But they will never do it. And the fact that they have the idea, it causes anxiety. So what I tell people sometimes is to acknowledge the thought. Before you fight the thoughts, before you let the thoughts bring on a fight to you, just acknowledge it. Not accept it, but acknowledge it as what it is, a thought. It's not an action, it's not valid until you do it. So you take the thoughts, you literally analyze it, and you put it on a shelf. Figuratively speaking, of course. You say, oh, it's just a thought. I'm going to put it on a shelf, I'm going to walk away. So once you have that mindset, you already understand that the thought is just something that happens to pass through your mind. It doesn't mean that that's who you are. So once you're able to see it that way, you might be able to go about your day not feeling distraught or overly worried about you acting on the thought, right? So it takes a little bit of practicing, of course. It takes a little bit of putting yourself into doing that. And it does work. I believe people have told me that once they just see it as what it is, a thought, and put them away, or quote unquote, put them on the shelf, they're able to forget about it, so to speak. So yeah, and it's very common. I'm saying it here on the show because it's very, very common. And the reason you don't know about it, you listening to me right now, the reason you hear it from your family, your friends, is because their intrusive, dystonic thoughts are usually very shameful, right? Or shame-provoking, or just uncomfortable. They won't share with anybody else, you know? So that's why you don't really hear about it, but it's very common. And that's it.
All right, everyone. Thank you again. Like, follow, subscribe, give us feedback.
Yeah, share, tag us. If you have a comment or a critique, we can take it. We can take a punch on the chin. You can tag us and with your critique, and tag us on IG with a rebuttal to Ja Morant, or come at me with my rant. Oh, look at that, more rant, my rant,
and his Ja rants. That's right.
Yeah,
and we will see you. We'll talk to you again. And
Get
if you have an
sleep,
idea for a
Florida.
topic, let us know too.
Get some sleep, South Florida. You need it.
The previous podcast represented the individual opinions of Dr. Dmitry Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, and the guests. It should not have been taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.